Hi everyone, my name is Theresa Klepper, and the title of my capstone is The Google Nest Merger, Accessibility as a Workplace Shift. So a bit of background. Google acquired Nest in 2014, yet it remained as a subsidiary company under Alphabet until 2018. And during a merger, there is a shifting of culture and identity while employees are shuffled and often let go. Conflict arises due to this job uncertainty. This tense situation can exacerbate weaknesses that were already in the workplace during calm times. In this type of environment, each employee's fears are heightened, and this uncertainty leads them to cling to their preformed identity to a deeper degree with attempt to feel safe. Conflict based on identity, power, and culture can result. Furthermore, the combination of status, power, and capability directly impacts social pressures faced by an employee with a disability and their desire to speak up or use their accommodations. The research question I explored is, what are the covert processes pressuring employees with disabilities to work within institutional ableism, and how does a merger specifically exacerbate these? This is my conflict map, which analyzes how cultural, economic, security, and political structures impact the actors. I mapped the dynamics of power and pressure, and I divided the actors between their different status roles within the organization, as well as types of disability in the sense of invisible, visible, congenital, or recently acquired. And I discovered that those categories of people within invisible, visible, recently acquired, or congenital disabilities, they all had experienced a slightly different relationship with societal expectations and with social pressures. I applied conflict resolution theories that qualified three main categories: identity, power, and organizational structure. Under identity, I used groupthink, meaning the desire to conform with the in-group. And we might be willing to sacrifice our own needs just so that we can move with the group. And embodied social norms, meaning that we learn and mimic how to move our bodies at a very young age, and we link these movements to a value system and social norms. Therefore, if a person breaks these movements or changes them, it also breaks a sort of trust, or it can impact the social norm attached to that movement. For power, I use a situated model of conflict and critical postmodern framework of organizational power. Now, these take a deep look at the context of how power can seep into organizations. So, for example, the situated model of conflict acknowledges that power, dependency, and the type, meaning either collaborative or competitive, of relationship, and how that sort of conflict or context can impact communication. In the case of a merger, it's a much more competitive sort of relationship. And so lastly, organizational structure. I use social hierarchy model and status construction theory. And combined, they could state that we make an assumption that a person is more competent based on the more resources that they have. The higher their status, the more pro-social interactions than those ranked lower than them. And the higher the status of a person's network members, the more opportunities they have to form connections with high-status employees. This phenomena formulates structural exclusion as it creates closed networks that group together. For an employee with a disability, this structure compounds with inaccessible environments to create a unique, complex barrier. I applied the needs fears map to analyze some data, and I found that Google executives felt that they were protecting themselves, their shareholders, and their consumers by keeping Nest as a subsidiary under Alphabet and subject to intense conditions, while Nest employees felt that their livelihood was threatened and their work not recognized or honored. I discovered that before moving the parties into the options column, that last column, they would first have to honor the needs, fears, and means of each other. Through this map, I was able to identify the pressure that the executives face. They could be held responsible for any slips made within their department and could be replaced. Furthermore, I identified that employees with disabilities were directly dependent on their accommodations or the supports from their jobs, such as healthcare. If they don't have these supports, they had little to no means or options. The stress and pressure of this reality likely weighs into every decision they make, which can place them in a low power, high dependency state and inhibit their communication. I also applied the conflict tree. So this is highlighted by some deep-seated fears steering the structural divides which characterize institutional ableism. Some of these roots or unseen forces include fear of physical weakness, vulnerability, sickness, or death, as well as the need for control of our body, of ourself, of others, and of nature. The manifest aspects include pressure to participate in ways that might not be supportive for a person with a disability, and also difficulty one faces just in getting their accommodations and backlash that they might receive for having them. And dynamics include a sort of ignorance around disability, leading to discomfort due to lack of conversations, lack of lived experience, but it could also produce a sort of proudness or strength of this lived experience. Stakeholder needs include, well, a strategic goal that I was exploring is to gain a deeper understanding of the unique challenges employees with a disability face, to determine how to better support them, and to grow the empathic ability of the whole workforce. So I identified, through applying these conflict analysis tools, I discovered that there were some needs every stakeholder had in common, which is the need for job security and efficient systems, which I put under profit and financial security, open communication structures, as well as competency, creativity, and freedom in their work. And the issues preventing these needs from being met are compounded by the embedded organizational structures which inhibit accessibility, such as processes that have ignored disability in their creation, communication structures which don't take into account the dynamic between participation, pressure, and expectations, and a culture of being overworked with no outlet for competency, creativity, or freedom at work. I introduced 3 intervention methods to respond to these needs, and I tried to take into consideration a bottom-up approach, a middle-out approach, and a senior-level down approach with hopes of creating a whole systems or culture shift. Intervention 1, the Six Sigma approach. So this is traditionally used for increasing quality and efficiency, and it provides a methodology, DMAIC, for streamlining business processes, for determining variance, what went wrong, and updating the system. These are the exact systems where ableism has been woven into the institution, yet they're also the place to unravel ableism and build adaptability into the system. So this first intervention would try to update systems at very targeted points, and so that they are more flexible and accessible. Intervention 2 is collaborative loops. This intervention aims to ease communication given and honoring the power and dependency dynamic. It's used also to ensure that those who are typically divided due to the structure of the organization and bless you, and day-to-day tasks day-to-day tasks are able to communicate. And they would focus on underlying structural, social, and power processes which inhibit an employee with a disability's motivation to speak up. And lastly, values into action. This intervention can link a person's most deeply held values with the critical social issue of accessibility, and therefore it has the power to foster a powerful internal shift with the understanding that that person will go back to their community and teach what they learned. This intervention also provides a commitment to sort of take action and in support of this critical social issue of accessibility and or disability. So I measure sustainable change based on reducing institutional ableism and promoting accessibility for people with disabilities. I monitor increased or decreased accessibility, which will demonstrate how these interventions affect a cultural shift toward access and raised awareness of disability over time. I monitor this change through a variety of ways, such as surveys, interviews, questionnaires, and engagement rates, which would be measuring the accessibility indicators of low attrition of employees with disabilities, growing number of employees with disabilities, feeling valued and secure in their job, as well as the feeling of tolerance around accommodations, support by leadership, and emotional sensitivity toward disability. Some challenges to sustainability, which this is a social network map which highlights a closed hierarchical structure with both status and value homophily, as well as people who may want to stay in power and keep things within the status quo, which all present some challenges. However, there is an opportunity with Rishi Chandra in the red circle there. Rishi Chandra is positioned to be able to bridge these entry level or junior level employees with the senior level. And so responses to this challenge include network weaving, which would begin by identifying that broker, Rishi Chandra. Network weaving is actually a multi-step process of restructuring the network, beginning by identifying the broker who connects these seemingly scattered groups to that broker and then to each other, and then connects them to external resources, which allows a flow of new information. Sociocultural resources is another response to the challenges, which uses the on-the-ground intelligence, organizational knowledge, and experiences of those directly impacted or those who have a high amount of influence and respect in the work environment. And also the socioeconomic resources, which begins by leaders actually believing the importance of the goal of accessibility with an understanding that economic resources will follow. And thank you so much.